having the mentorship gives me so much joy to see people break through those limiting beliefs. That somebody once believed in me enough to put in that time, and I'm sure they got the same self-fulfillment and reward of others being successful. And that's what we did.
This is Brandon Turner, and you are listening to the Average Joe Finances Podcast.
If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you smash the like and subscribe buttons. If you're listening to our podcast, go leave us a 5-star review. All of our links can be found in the video description or show notes below. Hey, welcome back to the Average Joe Finances Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Cavaggioni, and today I'm super excited to be talking to our special guest, CJ Calio. So CJ, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. It's been a pleasure to be able to network with you in person. It's finally an honor to be on your show.
Absolutely. It's been a long time coming, man. You should have been on this podcast long ago. But yeah, I'm super excited to have you on. I've known you for a while now. We've seen each other in the Hawaii real estate space quite a few times, right? We're always at similar events or hanging out. So I definitely appreciate your friendship and also your mentorship that you give not only to me, but to everybody else around you, man. You're definitely a moving force in especially out here on Oahu. So I will say you've impacted so many people. And today you're going to have the opportunity to impact more on this podcast. So definitely appreciate that. So CJ, I want to start things off the same way I start every podcast. And we want to know more about you. I know you, but my audience might not. So if you could share your story, tell us a little bit about your background, however far you want to go, but tell us about, or who is CJ Calio?
Awesome, Mike. Yeah, my story, if I were to focus it in, when real estate became a blip on my map, probably about 9 years ago. And at that time, I was comfortable. I was working a well-paid profession. I was a UPS driver by trade. And we get consistent hours, consistent work, good pay, good benefits, good retirement, good medical, the whole 9 yards. Everything that you strive for. It's a union job, right? It's comfortable. And that's where I was at. I was satisfied with life. Up until this one particular time of year, which I'm sure you and your guests probably know, where that UPS truck or the drivers don that brown Santa Claus suit that time of year. Yeah, that time of year. So this particular Christmas was the heaviest Christmas, and heavy meaning volume wise, where we were working unseen hours before. This is not the norm Christmas. This was the Christmas from hell is how I donned it. And what I found during this season of chaos and frustration around the vast amount of hours that I got to work while during the most precious, valuable, joyful time of year where you spend with family and friends wasn't around. And this lasted for 4 months or 5 months, give or take. I really don't remember. It was just a long time that I was in this consistent loop of working crazy hours. Anyway, I was frustrated. I was depressed. I was angry. I was starting to question, is this cushy job what I want? Is this what I'm willing to tolerate for the next 40 years and retire from? And the answer was no. I wasn't happy with trading time for money in this sense, where I didn't get to see my kids. I didn't get to see my wife. I didn't get to enjoy the holidays with my family. I was out delivering somebody else's gifts. I was out making other families happy, and I was missing mine. Once all this chaos died down and normal life started to kick back up, I brought a serious question to my wife. And I said, look, the season was horrible. I did not like it. I was depressed, angry, frustrated. I didn't see you guys for 4 months. And I leave my job. And to my surprise, she said, yeah, I just got one question for you. How are you going to replace your income? And being that I was in such an emotional state with all that anger and the frustration, I didn't think far ahead. I was only looking at the immediate solution, which is I just want to be around my family. I want to have the freedom to have the ability to just say, hey, it's Christmas. Let me go spend time with them. I didn't think, how do I continue living that lifestyle? So that That question really caught me off guard and it made me start to ponder. And the ideas that came up were around a man, me, who had very limited beliefs in the capability. So I stuck to what I was comfortable with and what I may have experienced in, or maybe what I knew, while Jazz, my wife, introduced real estate to me. Now, when she said that, I was like, real estate? How's that going to solve my problem? I had no clue. I had no real estate trade background, no construction background. I didn't understand it, so it scared me. It put me in this fear-based mentality where my supporter, my biggest person in my corner was saying, yeah, you can leave. Let's look into real estate. I actually pushed her away. I went into resistance to real estate, mostly because I didn't know. I didn't know what real estate entailed to. So I encouraged her, great, you go look into real estate. Let me go do my own thing. I pivoted away from my support system and I started startups. I started roughly about 8 or 9. And like most of these startups, most of them don't make it. And I found myself 6 to 9 months later in a similar position of frustration, anger, depression, and out of more money than when I first started because you get to throw a lot of capital into startups. And I never saw a return on it, hence it not working. So with my tail tucked between my legs, after all these failed attempts, I came crawling back to my wife, who was still on the real estate train and more engaged than ever. And I said, look, what I'm doing isn't working. You're my biggest support. Help me to understand real estate. So she said, great, let's go to some meetups. Still in that immature, limited belief, still in that mindset around, I'm not capable of doing this. I don't have experience. I don't want people to know I don't know anything. I was that husband in the back of the room, arms crossed, defensive, unapproachable, at these real estate networking events where all these great people were wanting to talk to me. And I'm like, my wife's over there. She's the boss. Go talk to her. And see, the cool thing about just being in that space is over time, started to pick up on the language. I started to hear things she was sharing with me. Right. I noticed that these guys are real. They're sharing their wins. And all these things that I created in my mind around this won't work started to melt away. And my defensive softened, my openness to being a freshman, so to speak, in a new environment and willing to learn opened up where I became approachable. I started having conversations with people doing real estate and getting informed and educating myself around the options there are in investing in real estate. And lo and behold, in a short span of time, I went from that defensive guy in the background to the person in front of the room speaking. And I drank the Kool-Aid. And after all this happened, I started to gain confidence in where, okay, let's go take action. So we realized replacing our income was our goal. Strategy we decided to grab a hold of and run with was buy and hold for cash flow. It made sense to us. Replace income with streams of income. So we took our first leap of faith. We jumped into our first turnkey property out of state, and still in the young mindset, we said, let's sit and watch this. 6 months goes by, still there, still performing. 9 months, you know what? I think we're good. Let's go in and go back at it. And over a span of 4 years, we amassed a large portfolio that eventually got me and my wife financial freedom. And the cool thing about success and staying focused in on a strategy is people take notice. And throughout the process, people are like, how are you doing this? What's working for you? Can you teach me? And I ended up falling back into a form of business where mentorship became an option. People wanted to seek guidance from somebody who's been there, who's already paid that tuition. And that's what I do now today, paired with our real estate. And the cool part is, like we were talking before the Zoom call started, is we've taken what we've learned in real estate and really scaled up. Now we're in the commercial space. And 9 years into this business, I have so much I look forward to in the years to come, and just bigger and greater goals as we go along in our journey.
Yeah, CJ, thank you so much for going that deep into your background. That is just so amazing. I want to circle back to something that you said earlier on. It was a question that Jazz asked you, right? When you decided, hey, you were in that emotional state, right? It was the busiest season of the year for you. And you're just like, I'm just done. I want to be done with this. Do you support my decision? And of course, you said she's always been your biggest supporter. She said yes, but didn't she ask you that one question? And that was, how are you going to replace your income? And it just gets the wheels turning. I got to say, I can really relate to a lot of those struggles when it comes to startups, right? I have put a couple things together that I thought were going to be the greatest things since sliced bread that have been flops, where other ones have been just okay, maybe made a little bit of profit. But for the most part, you start something up, any type of drop shipping business or anything like that. I've done a couple of those. A lot of times it takes a very long time before you can be profitable, time that you don't have,
Yeah.
especially after you left a good paying career. So during that initial transition, you had a couple of the things you put together that didn't work out. What was that aha moment? Was it at one of those meetups that you were at? Because I know you said you were starting to learn the lingo and everything. What was the exact moment, though, where the switch flipped, the light bulb turned on and said, you know what? I am going all in on real estate.
For me, it was really my wife. I mean, from when I started and pivoted away from her, I went off and I did a lot of things very quickly with no result, actually negative result because they failed. And she was still consistent with real estate, coming to the same tune. Buy and hold cash flow, buy and hold cash flow. And she really enrolled me into the idea and concept that this could solve our problem, which was replacing our income, cash flow. And for me, that aha moment was really being humble enough to acknowledge I went and I tried. I did what I thought would work. And based on results, I didn't do well. However, my wife is still focused on the first thing she brought up, and she's making traction in setting up that plan for success. How about I just get on board? That aha was the pride shift, dropping the fences of not knowing anything about real estate and being open to learning something completely new and scary.
Awesome. I appreciate the transparency there. Now, okay, CJ. So as you got started up, right, the typical thing that you enjoyed was buy and hold, right? Because that was what was being preached to you
Mhm.
consistently from Jazz, right? So you're like, okay, buy and hold. Eventually, you've shifted a little bit away from that to do some other things where you're still doing buy and hold, but different ways of doing it. Can we talk about that a little bit? I know one of your favorite methods of investing in real estate is the BRRRR strategy. So can you explain that a little bit and what made you get into doing BRRRRs?
Yeah, Mike, perfect. So the BRRRR is an acronym. It stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. And what changed for us was the fact that we ran out of mortgages. We ran out of capital that we were self-funding our initial deals. And it's cool because in order to level up in anything, you got to be a new version of yourself. You got to be willing to step into the uncomfortable space and try new things. And for us, when we hit the wall of, okay, you don't qualify for traditional mortgages, what do I do? Initially, I was like, oh, we're stuck. Can't do anything. And through the growth of networking, through the growth of hanging out with like-minded investors like you, my mindset started to transform in a sense where, no, this means there's different opportunity. I just haven't identified it yet. And that's when I stumbled onto the BRRRR. And what I love about the BRRRR is it allowed me to take limited capital and rinse and repeat it far more effectively than just buying turnkey. And that was the huge shift for me, was knowing that, okay, this door closed, but the door is open. I get to go and find where that door is.
Awesome. Yeah. So it was that strategic thinking, right? It was you knew what worked, right? But then you got to a point where it's okay, this works, but to a point. Now we're at a spot where we can't take out a traditional mortgage anymore. We're capped out. And you started thinking. And that's one of the things that all great entrepreneurs do is when they hit a wall, they're like, okay, how do I either bust through this wall, climb over it, or dig under it? I need to find a way to get to the other side. And that's part of that evolution, right? Which you've definitely have done and you've evolved. Now, not only were you doing the residential BRRRRs, but you evolved past that to what you're doing now. And I'd love to know a little bit about that because you don't hear about this too much out there. But I know one of the things you really enjoy doing now is taking that same BRRRR strategy and taking it over to the commercial side. So can you share a little bit about that with us? Like, how does that work on the commercial side to do a BRRRR like that?
Oh man, so before I go into that part, the what I want to highlight is when you become an expert in something, it just becomes fun. It's simplified and it's almost easy and effortless. And it also gives you opportunity to challenge yourself on how can I take this a little bit further? And that's what we chose to do. We took it from the residential, became experts in the BRRRR in residential, where we were able to almost do this in our sleep to, okay, we have now got comfortable. It's time to get uncomfortable. Let me go and try it in a different arena, something that makes me a slight bit scared. That was commercial. Now, the BRRRR strategy is buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. And what I found that works in commercial, not multifamily commercial, you can play with the BRRRR by removing some R's. The value add play in the commercial space and what we do isn't always necessary about finding the most ugliest, dilapidated building. It could simply mean looking for an underperforming asset that you can reposition and add value in through simply leasing it up. Hence taking out the rehab R and just getting it rented. And that's where the fun part of that BRRRR method is, because we are still applying the same concept, limited capital to amass and rinse and repeat over and over just on larger deals. And that's the cool part about it, is you're free to do rehabs if you feel needed. And in the commercial space, it's rarely needed. There's always ways to work around it when you have great tenants in place, because it just operates so much different and uniquely compared to residential.
So CJ, you know what you can call that kind of BRRRR method? What you do is you'll take the R that's for renovation and make it lowercase, right? It's still there. You got it if you need it. Sometimes you don't need it.
Hey,
or even put like one little line through it or something. So when you write your book, make sure that's how you put the acronym in it, because that's how I want to remember it and be like, I know where he got that from. So
credit to Mike. I gotta
Yes,
put the shout out in
needs
that
to be in
book.
the
Mike
footnotes
gave
or
me that
something.
idea. It's on this recording.
That's awesome, man. No, that's awesome, because I think in my head, the way I was looking at it was it's the same type of strategy, right? So, okay, how do you renovate these commercial spaces? But what you said, that makes a lot of sense, right? A lot of times these buildings are already put together the way they need to be. You just need to get the right businesses in there, right? You need to have the right customer leasing that building. Tell me a little bit about some of your strategies when it comes to finding the right fit and the right business to fit in that building. So what are some of the things that you're looking for when you find a underutilized piece of commercial property? And then how do you take that and flip it into its best utilization?
Yeah, so there's so much to unpack there. And if I were to simplify it, it's really similar to what you do in residential. You get to identify what you're looking to buy. Are you looking to buy single family, small multi, large multi? Are you looking to buy condos or townhouse? You have these different classified assets that you get to focus in on. And in what we do, we like to identify what the market's driving. So, in example, in our market we're in right now, industrial is starting to pick up because it's just so cheap out in the Midwest. And with the knowledge of industrial, what drives industrial real estate, and really getting to be vastly knowledgeable in that helps you to identify then the asset that makes sense. For industrial, what I've gathered so far is you get to have a very large space with certain amount of roll-up doors, 40-footer dock bay, a trailer dock bay where you can go in and out of the space, very small office and a bathroom. That's what they desire in our market right now, alongside it being easily accessible to an interstate. So if it's right off an on and off ramp, you're in the prime location. If you're tucked away in the middle of nowhere, probably not ideal, which makes it harder to find a strong tenant to rent because they want visibility, they want ease of access. And that could be repositioned in any other way. If you go to office medical, are you close to a hospital? Are you close to an area that desires a lot of doctors or has a lot of residential space? Are you by a senior facility or 55 and older community? Like these little indicators, no different than residential. You just shift the vehicle to commercial and practice the same method.
And then looking at those indicators and the location being one of the biggest ones, right? You can figure out what's nearby. I would think if you have a location that is close to a hospital, that would be a fantastic place to maybe turn it into an outpatient, or I'm sorry, like an inpatient area, where a a lot of times people go to the ER and they get referred somewhere. They'd rather go somewhere closer to the hospital than having to go like to the next city to see a
Right.
specialist or something. Yeah, that's huge, man. That's huge. Definitely appreciate that. Now, besides what the amazing things that you've done in real estate, you and Jazz, you also built something else, right? And you touched on this a little bit, right? Was the mentorship side. And you found that as you got so much more enjoyment out of what you're doing, out of what you were doing, you were getting even more enjoyment helping other people do that. So can you tell me, like, how did you start WN Properties? Like, what was the catalyst that said, okay, you know what? Enough people have asked. I'm listening. Let me help.
Catalyst. If I were to think back, I'd have to give credit to my sister-in-law. She had a real conversation around what you're doing is unique and you have value. And it really gave me the confidence needed to say, you're right, let's go ahead and do this. Originally, I started giving away free, and everything free, there's really little to no value there. People don't really cherish it. And I got to get honest with myself. My experience, my time, my expertise is worth something. And if people are serious enough and ask these two simple questions, I always challenge those who are wanting to have a conversation around mentorship. Does the person have what you want to have? And are they doing what you're wanting to do? And if those two things are answered, all you're doing is verifying now if they're legit. And if they are, why not go and piggyback and follow their trailblaze path instead of putting in the 10,000 hours and going and making your own path only to get to the same solution? And it was just enough people asking, man, I really would like to achieve financial freedom. I don't like my job. We had things in common and they wanted to replace their income. And I had a method that worked. I had a proven track record. I had credibility. I had a portfolio that could verify it was legit and people really saw value in that. And I started to take them and work with them. Like I like to use the personal trainer analogy. You could join the gym, get in shape and so forth. Most people join the gym and don't see it past January when they start their New Year's resolution. However, those who join classes and or personal one-on-one guidance tend to have quicker results and stick with it a whole lot longer because they're being held accountable at some level. That's what we ended up creating is those types of opportunities where you could jump into a community of like-minded people wanting to do the same thing, all rowing in the same direction, where we now get to hui or come together and collaborate and cooperate. Powerful seeds that get you to go quicker. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. That's what I wanted to create, was that community. Because the thing is, we want others to experience this, or at least have the option to do what we've done. Because this stuff ain't taught in school. And that's sad if you really think about it, that we are trained and embedded to go to college to get a job and work 40 years to retire when we're 60 or 70 years old and live the remaining part of our life when we're less physically capable. It doesn't make sense to me now that I'm on this side. And having this program, having the mentorship gives me so much joy to see people break through those limiting beliefs. If somebody once believed in me enough to put in that time, and I'm sure they got the same self-fulfillment and reward of others being successful. And that's what we did.
CJ, that is the perfect answer. Honestly, that was fantastic. There's so much to touch on here. I took a bunch of notes as you were going. The very first thing that you were talking about was when your sister-in-law talked to you about this was the value, right? What you were doing adds value to other people. And when you first started off doing it for free, you realize quickly that, hey, one, the people that I'm helping out for free, for the most part, they don't hold themselves accountable. They did not put any skin in the game. I've noticed this too, as when I do financial coaching, I have helped a couple people for free. And for the most part, every free client I've had didn't last very long before they fell off the bandwagon. And that was that. So now I'm more of the mindset like, hey, look, if you want to do this, you got to pay for my time, for one. For two, it's going to work. Like, we're going to get you there. All right. It's worth it in the long run. And when you think about it, the other thing that you had mentioned too was yeah, sure, you can go down your own path, do your own thing, your way, learn from your mistakes, which there's always going to be that path. There's always going to be mistakes, no matter whether or not you have a mentor, a coach, whatever, you're going to make your own mistakes. However, It's a lot cheaper to pay somebody that's been there, done that, to teach you about how not to make the mistakes they made, so you can avoid a lot of those pitfalls that a lot of people in the real estate space call a master's degree or secondary education in real estate to the tune of 6 figures. A lot of people have huge losses because they decided to just, "Ah, I got this. I can do it on my own. I'll figure it out." And sure, part of that process of figuring out is paying for that education that you're getting. So you can pay the 1,000, 2,000, 8,000, 10,000, whatever it is, whatever program you're going into, you can pay that now and learn, or you could pay 100,000 over time with the mistakes that you're making, right? So I think that's a very important thing. I personally believe in coaches and mentors. I have a coach. I'm also a couple different masterminds, paid masterminds. And as a matter of fact, the last interview I did earlier today was with a member of the War Room, another mastermind that I'm in. And that was one of the part of the discussions that we had, is that the piece that you get out of that, not only do you get to learn from those other people, but you get to network as well, right? And you learn from the other people around them, right? It's all about who you surround yourself with.
Yes.
I think Jim Rohn said, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And that is 100% fact. I try to surround myself all the time with people that are way more successful than me, that are making way more money than me, because guess what? I want to be like them. So CJ, I want to be like you, man. You're out there crushing it, bro. And what you've built with WNN, I don't want anybody listening to this to understand. I want you all to understand just how big of a deal it is, because I have been privileged to go to a lot of events that you guys put together. I had the privilege of being a speaker at the last full real estate event. And I got to say, just the organization and the team that you have now is just amazing. And they put together something that really was very impactful. I talked to so many people afterwards and just asked them, like, "Hey, what did you get out of this?" I'm sure you've seen some of my stuff on social media. I walk around with my little microphone. I'm asking, like, "Hey, what did you learn today?" And this and that. And people love it, man, because they really get so much out of it. And that's a testament to what you put together with WN Properties. So I just want to say hats off to you. I would take mine off, but then everybody would be blinded by my bald dome. But hats off to you, CJ, because you and Jazz are killing it, bro. And super honored to know you and call you a friend. And just, this has been amazing, man. That's okay. Enough of that. I just wanted to put that out there, that it is important to understand the value of what you get. And that is something that I'm glad you quickly realized. For me, it took a little while of doing a lot of free coaching to the tune of over a year, where I was like, man, I'm helping all these people out. And I feel like they're not getting my best, and I'm not getting from them what I need from them to make them better, because they're not holding themselves accountable.
Yeah.
So accountability is huge, man. So when you realize that, and I know I've been rambling, man, I'm from New York. You got to deal with it here. Okay. When you realize that value piece, and you said, okay, I got to figure out how to put this together. Again, like, I went off on that tangent to explain how big WN has become, because it has to start somewhere, right? So when you had that epiphany moment and you said, okay, I want to build this and I want to help people out, and I was doing the free thing, but what was that moment when you said, okay, this is what I think I need to charge. This is how I want to build out my team. There's a whole bunch of pieces that come together. So what did that look like for you after you had that conversation with your sister-in-law?
Yeah, it was alluding back to some things you're bringing up, the team members. Having that shortcut. What we have is a community of proven team members that people get instantly introduced to once they're part of the group. Like that alone carries so much weight and value. It's really challenging to put a price tag on it. Another was the ability to spend committed time with them on a weekly basis, following up on their vision, on their goals, their commitments that they're willing to do, their KPIs, and really getting in their face. And one of the things I used to tell people early on, which is now easily known and spread in our community, is I'm not always here to be your friend. I'm not needing to be liked. I'm going to be kind to you. I'm not going to be nice. I'm going to be kind to you. And sometimes kind is telling you the truth you do not want to hear, because I care about your progress. And the beautiful thing about accountability, it's not the measure of failure, it's the measure of progress. How are you progressing towards what you said you wanted? And my initial ability to do this took some time where my first few mentees, they got to learn with me. I was a learning curve. And as I fell into this groove, I really understood that part of my unique capability or skill set is to hold people accountable, encourage and guide them through what they claim they wanted, and really not push them, but run alongside them and say, you're capable. You can do this. You have everything you need inside of you. You just don't realize it yet. Borrow some of my faith because I have faith in you. And that line carried a lot of people through that initial rough patch of, this is crazy. That's 3,000 miles away. How do I know I'm buying something real? How do I know I can trust the team? Well, we set you up with the proven stuff that's worked for us. And I share with you the transparency around the things that did not work for me. Whether you take that and run with it, or whether you buck it and say, I'm going to still try it anyway, at least you know where I came from. And that all helped me put together an idea of what my time was worth. Because like you said, time is precious. It's our most precious gift. And having that appreciation and respect for those that you spend time with is something that you get to grow with in your mindset. In the beginning, I didn't value my time. I gave it away freely to everybody. And the funny thing is, like you were saying, free doesn't work for most people. In the reality, there's enough how-to books in any given library. There's enough podcasts out there. There's enough data on the website for anybody to take this BRRRR strategy, which personally I didn't invent, and figure it out on their own if they're willing to put in the time. And I know this to be true because at some point I needed accountability, I needed mentorship, I needed guidance. We all get to that point where you've outgrown free. You mentioned it yourself too. It took a year of free. Then you realize I get to level up. And finding value isn't always money. Sometimes value is adding value in some unique, capable way to the person you're seeking guidance from. And that's right there. I'll leave it right there because it's up to your mind to decide what that could look like for that supposed person in that higher caliber position that you want to seek guidance from.
Yeah, CJ, I love that. And the biggest piece of that is figuring out what is your time valued at? Because even like you said, like with your previous career with UPS, even then, it might not seem like it was free because you were getting paid, but you were freely giving your time because there was a limit. Like you got paid per hour. Sure, there could be some overtime opportunities and things like that, but there was a limit to how far you can go with that. You realize that, hey, I could break this wall and get past any limiting factor. And in our space, we call these limiting beliefs, right? There's so many ways that you could break past these to keep increasing the value of your time. And you've cracked that code, man, and you've done a really great job with it. So with that being said, now that we got all the pieces together of how your real estate journey culminated into what you built with WN, now I'd like to know, what is it that helps you keep everything together? Because with every great business comes great systems and processes, right? So how do you have your team organized is one part of it. The other part is, what kind of CRM and other software do you use that is like you can't live without?
Right. Where do I start? People, in order to level up in what we do in any part of real estate, you eventually have to learn to delegate and outsource. So having the right people in your space prepared for, nurtured on, and cultivated to step into higher levels is a must for me. So everybody on our leadership team, everybody in the advisor space and below have all gone through it. We're not looking to be that company that tells you and preaches to you what you should do, but don't believe in it in yourself. We walk the walk. We are the testimony ourselves. We go first. So having that team in place that can step into those roles, identifying each team member's unique capability or special gift. That was a game changer for us, right? Not everybody's designed or capable of being a speaker or a podcast host. And some people are better off in a closed dark room running numbers and calculations and creating systems and processes. Having the knowledge and the behind wanting what's best for them and coaching, guiding, and encouraging them to stay focused in on that, while others, the other who's on your team, can fill in the voids everywhere else. Processes. One thing we love is Zoom. We were doing Zoom before COVID. COVID made Zoom popular. Being remote required us to stretch ourselves in team creation and network ability across 3,000 miles. So we were leveraging social media, Messenger, Live, Zoom before the pandemic. And the pandemic actually solidified what we do works. Because now everybody's on it. We're doing this via Zoom. It's pretty cool. Having technology like this to leverage to connect with team members, whether you're in the neighborhood or not, benefit from it. Having a process in place that you've created to manage and maintain your portfolio and or business is crucial. You got to know what you're making. It's not how much you make, it's how much you keep. And if you don't know your numbers and you're not constantly checking your balances and running analysis around where can we trim the fat, where can we increase profitability, you're eventually going to run into a hardship. We've experienced that firsthand. Trello is one of the online platforms that allows you to keep very clear notes, information, files, videos, uploads, everything you can think of gets stored on this cloud-based program, and it's free. You can choose to upgrade. There's a lot of these tools out there that are free that you can leverage, and they have paid options if you want more supposed meat on the bone.
I love Trello boards. I just want to throw that out there.
Trello is amazing. That's game changer. I have about 100 boards now, and I get to filter through this as
It
the
was
years
crazy
move
when I
ahead
had
and
7.
delegate out. Yeah, in a nutshell, that's what came to mind on what systems processes work. And it's the people that get to be your primary investment.
Yeah, that's huge, man. And that's impactful, right? And I really hope that my listeners are taking down some notes here, right? Because we ran through the whole gamut of from start to like fully operational, what you can do to build a real estate business and maintain it. And that's huge. I love different CRM systems, right? I've tried out a whole bunch. Trello is what I stuck with the longest, but I've recently switched to Asana. Their free version is still super, super good. And I can actually have my board set up in there just like a Trello board. But for all the things I'm doing now, it's worked out a little bit better for me. But man, Trello holds a special place in my heart because it was the first one that kind of really stuck with me and helped me with my team and everything, making sure the messages were getting to the right people. Definitely huge, definitely huge. You have to have something, right? You can only do so much on an Excel spreadsheet by yourself before you start like ripping your hair out and then you're bald like me. CJ, this has been fantastic, man. I really appreciate it. But now I need to transition this into something that we call the final round. It's where I'm going to ask you the same 4 questions I ask everybody that comes on this show, and it's going to help us get into the mind of CJ and put you on the spot with these last couple questions. So if you're ready to go, we'll get this party started.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right, CJ. First question of the final round is, what's the biggest mistake you've ever made in real estate?
Trusting but not verifying. And an example would be is a property manager. We got introduced to them from a vetted investor with a large portfolio, and we instantly stepped into this belief around it worked for him, it should work for us, until it didn't. And the reality is, because we didn't verify, we didn't understand this team member's vision, goals, purpose, methods of property managing, which you come to find out there's a lot of different ways to property manage. And it put us in a position of, oh crap, this ain't gonna last. We get to move, and we weren't prepared. Verification allows you to build in fail safes, options, pivot points. When you feel it's not working for you, you can adjust and move. We didn't. And we learned very costly and timely the importance of trusting but verifying.
Awesome. And that is something you can definitely learn about in CJ's mentorship, and you don't have to learn it the hard way the way he did. So to give you a plug there. But hey, all right, man, I definitely appreciate the transparency there, because a lot of people, they run into issues like that, right? Where they trust somebody that they said, oh yeah, this person's got a great reputation. They have good reviews. They said that they did it. I'm going to believe that they did it. And then come to find out they either didn't do everything the right way, or they cut some corners somewhere, or they just didn't do it at all. Can be very costly, frustrating, and just downright make you want to be like, why am I even doing this? Definitely appreciate you sharing that with us. I think a lot of people need to know that this stuff does happen out there. It's reality. Okay. So CJ, next question kind of ties into the last one, is what is something that you've learned that you wish you knew when you first started this out?
the value of being in the space of somebody who has what I want and is doing what I'm looking to do. And whether it's mentorship or whether it's networking, like I said, it's not always about money. Sometimes it's adding value to them. Just really fully grabbing a hold of how quickly that can magnify and multiply my speed.
Yeah, 100%. That V word is so powerful, right? What kind of value are you providing? And it goes both ways, right? Because you can be adding value to someone else, and they can also be adding some significant value to you as well. So it's about putting yourself out there too, right? And you've definitely come a long way from being the guy in the back of the meetup, sitting there with your arms crossed, like not wanting to talk to anybody. Yeah, I see what you guys are doing, whatever, to where you are now, man. Now you're the guy that's up on the stage telling people, hey, let's go, let's do this. Definitely come a long way, brother. So,
Thank you.
okay. Hey, CJ, I don't want to go down another tangent here. So we got to get to the next question. Do you have any tips or tricks that you would recommend to someone that is just getting started out today?
Yes, figure out why. Create a vision. Let that vision be from a space that you've already arrived at this. What I believe this does is it anchors into your mind what you genuinely want in whatever it is, and you can walk it back and create a reasonable action plan that sets you up for success. And by doing that, when let's just use real estate as an example, when real estate surfaces in your vision, in a year from now, I'm going to own X amount of property, you get to figure out the what and the how. I believe a lot of people start with the how, which is why they never get to the why. Start with the why, create a vision, actionable steps and plans that you're willing to be held accountable to, and just go out and do.
I absolutely love that, man. Absolutely love that. Fantastic. Okay. So yeah, if you're new and starting out, listen to what CJ's saying. Okay. CJ, final question of the final round. And this one's a softball. This is an easy one. But do you have a favorite business, investing, or real estate related book or podcast, or both?
Well, it's hard to say that your podcast ain't on there either. I would like to say Mike's podcast. And I have a book, and it might catch people off guard because it's neither and it applies. It's called Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. And why it's so important to me, and we require this in what we do as a must read when you first start. See, the funny thing is once you understand the power of ownership over everything in your life, you harness the power to change it. Operating from extreme ownership is in our philosophy of what we do. And once you understand that, gosh, you're able to move mountains, you're able to grow at speed you never thought you could, and achieve goals that were probably set farther out than realistically achievable, and you hit it sooner. All because you come from a space of, I cannot fail, I can only learn and grow. And that's extreme ownership.
I love that, man. Great recommendations. Definitely appreciate that. All right, CJ, again, this has been an absolute treat. I think I've learned more about you today too than just in some of the interactions that we've had in person. So I definitely appreciate your transparency, everything that you shared with us. I know my audience is loving it. But speaking of that, for those members that are like, hey, I really enjoyed what CJ was talking about. It really kind of put a bug in me, or this is something I want to learn more about. Where can people find more information about you? Do you have a website you could share with us, social media, anything like that?
Yeah, I got both. So those that are on social media, I may not be as active as others. We do have our Instagram account at WN Properties. So if you want to follow us, that's where you can follow us on social media. And for those that found value in this podcast, found value in, maybe you relate to the situation I was in when I shared my testimony of how I got started, or the frustrations of not knowing anything about real estate. If that tugs a chord on your heart, I'd love to give you a free gift. So if you want, you can go to our website, why not now in realestate.com, and just download your free PDF. It has a brief summary of the strategies that we went over today and a little bit more in depth of what we do in WNN.
CJ, thank you so much. And thank you for offering that to our listeners. I will make sure all those links are in the show notes to make it easy for everybody. So you can just click away, copy and paste. Just don't do it while you're driving. Okay. Hey, again, CJ, it's been a pleasure. Hey, to my listeners, I also want to thank you all so much for joining me and our special guest, CJ Calio, today on the Average Joe Finances podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a 5-star review and tell us what you liked about today's episode with CJ. Aloha from Hawaii and have a great rest of your day. Thank you for making it to the end of this episode. Greatly appreciate you being here with me today on the Average Joe Finances podcast. If you haven't done so yet, make this the episode that you go leave us a 5-star rating or subscribe to our YouTube channel. The Average Joe Finances podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. Have an outstanding day.